Hey there, welcome back. It's good to see you again. Last time we talked about a guy who wanted to be everything, right? He had some goofs, had some spoofs, had a couple of laughs even. But today we're going to talk about something just a little bit more grisly. It's gonna be a whale of a tale, I tell ya. Stick around till the end. It's gonna be good, I promise. But before we even begin, why don't you just subscribe if you haven't already, and like the video, by the way. Thanks a bunch. Anyway, let's begin with the good stuff, right? Back in the middle of 19th century, Herman Melville was about to hit the big leagues. This was his chance. He felt it in his bones. He was about to show his writing genius to a whole wide world, or at least that's what he thought. The timing couldn't be any more perfect. Everyone still remembered the thing that happened not too long ago around Nantucket. Oh, we'll get to the thing soon enough, don't you worry. The whale unfortunately didn't sell quite well in the first few weeks, months even. Maybe Melville overestimated his writing genius. The first wave of criticism was overly harsh and contested his writing skill as a mixture of romance and factual nonsense. Truth be told, it was mostly unwarranted, but that is neither here nor there, nor is it important for this particular instance. But what is important is that Melville himself decided to go to Nantucket amidst the poor reviews and horrible sales. Among the locals was George Pollard Jr., a 60-something-year-old man who was captain of a ship called Essex. Now, just in case you didn't know, the Moby Dick, or the whale, was loosely based on a tragic fate of the unfortunate Essex. And as it usually is, the reality seems to be far more gruesome and disturbing than fiction. This time is no different. Whatever Melville wrote was quite mild compared to the thing that happened to the Essex and its sailors. And no one knew that better than the former captain George Pollard Jr., who was still alive to tell the tale. Now a broken man, a night watchman, in a town that shuns him as Jonah, the unlucky one. Only Melville held the captain in high regard. Maybe it was his inner sailor from youth that understood the hardships of the captain a bit. He said, "To the islanders he was a nobody, but to me the most impressive man, though wholly unassuming, even humble, that I ever encountered." This time we are diving deep to see what happened to the Essex and its crew. So sit back, relax, grab something to eat. Wait, maybe not something to eat, but something to drink, and join me on this journey. Listen to this grim tale of a broken ship, once adrift on the open sea, with no food, sleepless nights and scorching days, madness and delirium which it brought to its crew, a horrific fate of two young men, and cannibalism. Now, being a sailor is no easy task, not even now, let alone a few centuries back. Now, with booming industrial revolution and high demand for anything whale-related, going from its blubber, which was used in candles and oil, to the very bones, which were then used in corsets and petticoats. Any ship that could was used in whale hunting. Essex, though only 88 feet long, which is 26 meters, was quite small, but was deemed lucky since in her 20-year-long operation there were no major incidents. In fact, in her last few voyages she was quite profitable. The captain, George Pollard Jr., and first mate Owen Chase were in charge of the ship. The voyage was supposed to last 2.5 years, hunting sperm whales of the west coast of South America. Now, on August 12th in 1819, Essex with a 21-strong crew, set her sails unknowingly for the last time and left Nantucket. Let's just put that number here. Keep an eye on it. Unfortunately, the troubles soon arrived after they left Nantucket. A big storm did some considerable damage to the ship just 2 days after they left the port and nearly sank the ship. The topgallant sail was destroyed, as well as 2 of the 5 smaller boats, which they used to actively hunt whales. The ship was still going on. The captain didn't want to stop, even though the crew saw this as an omen of something more terrible to come. The further hit to a already low morale of the crew came in September the following year, when somewhere around the northern coast of the now Ecuador, a sailor, Henry DeWitt, deserted the ship. Let's start the countdown. 20 men remaining. Now the problem with this is that their whaleboats needed 6 men to operate them. Whaleboats being the smaller boats they used to actively hunt the sperm whales. That meant that 2 men would be left on the Essex during the hunt. Now, the excessive fishing around this area of South America meant that they had to find a different spot. There was nothing to fish in this particular part of the world. Under the advice from other captains, Pollard intended to push forward. In fact, around 2,500 nautical miles off of shore, even though the rest of the crew was being paranoid about cannibals being near the vicinity of that area. Before venturing on that journey, they had to resupply on the Charles Islands on Galapagos. The idea was that they would have to stock up on tortoise meat and then start their journey. Now on the islands, someone from the crew, a helmsman, Thomas Chappell, thought it would be hilarious to start fire on the island during dry season. Needless to say, fire spread like STDs in the 70s. Almost half the island was now engulfed in flames. They had to practically run through the fire to get to the boats. Researchers even now believe that this specific fire was responsible for the extinction of several different species of birds and tortoises. They had to move to their destination. There were no more distractions. Now when they did reach their spot, hunting went without any major problems for quite some time. Until November the 16th in 1820, when Owen Chase was the only one left on the boat to repair his whaleboat, which was previously damaged during one of these hunts. Now during his repairs he noticed a particularly large whale under the waves observing the ship. According to Chase, the whale was around 85 feet long, which would make him almost the same length as Essex, which is, if you remember, 88 feet long. His whole body was full of scars. This was no young nor ordinary whale. He had seen some shit, and he had seen enough of that shit. Creepily watching the ship, Chase felt that something was off about this particular one. Suddenly, all the rage and pent-up anger exploded within the whale, and he rammed the ship and went underwater immediately. Chase nearly fell from the first impact, or from the shock, who could say. Resurfacing on the other side of the ship, now with even more rage and velocity, clapping his jaw, he headed straight for the ship once more. The second hit was fatal. The water was rushing in faster than they could pump it out. Fate of the Essex was sealed then and there by that one enraged whale. When Pollard and the rest of the crew came back, the only thing they could do was gather all navigational instruments they could and some food and water before it all went down with the sinking ship. On Pollard's question what happened to the ship, Chase could only answer with, "We have been stowed by a whale." Refusing to face reality or to separate himself from the ship that was everything to him, Pollard sat there on a wreckage dumbfounded, with little to no idea what to do next. It took him quite a while to come to terms with the idea that Essex is no more and way beyond salvation under the sea. Now was the time to start planning their next course of action, and Pollard thought that their best bet of survival was if they set sails to Marquesas Islands or Society Islands. Now Chase and the rest of the crew were against the idea because they for some reason believed that the islands were full of cannibals. You'll see the irony in that soon, really soon. They thought that going south was a fast way of salvation. Even though the distance to land was further, ships went on that route quite more often, and they would get picked up sooner rather than later. Pollard relented, and soon they went south to South America. For the next month they were eating anything that they could salvage from the Essex, mostly bread and dried meat. The problem with that was that it was all soaked in salt water, and it already made them even more dehydrated, while the water source was already quite scarce. Down the line they resorted to even drinking their own urine, which again is not going to help you if you are already dehydrated. It's just going to worsen the already bad situation. While it might not have any serious health demerits, in a situation when you are dehydrated, it's not going to help you, since it still contains dissolved salts and minerals. The only thing that it can do is give you a placebo effect of feeling relief of drinking something water-like. So please, don't be like Bear Grylls. Don't go drinking your piss left and right, okay? Soon they arrived at Henderson Island, where they found a freshwater source and some wildlife to hunt and eat. Unfortunately, after just 1 week, they were started to running out of supplies. Yet another island that was turned barren by a bunch of sailors. Funny how it goes sometimes. When they were planning to leave, 3 men decided to stay. William Wright, Seth Weeks, and Thomas Chappell. And no one objected. And how could they? Everyone was keenly aware of how limited supplies were. Now, 17 of them, thinking that sea would offer them a better chance of survival, set their sails towards Eastern Island on the 27th of December. 3 boats remained. 1 captained by Pollard, 1 captained by Owens, and the last one by second mate Matthew Joy. Sadly, by January 4th they realized that they steered far too south and missed the island by a lot. Exhausted, dehydrated and starving, soon crew members began dying. First one to go was second mate Matthew Joy. The ship was now captained by Obed Hendricks. Soon after that, Chase's boat was separated from the pack during a storm, and the second one to follow Joy was Richard Patterson on Chase's ship. One man, Isaac Cole, during delirium demanded to be fed, given water and a napkin. After such demands, he fell and started convulsing, and by tomorrow he was already dead. What happened next might come as no surprise. They separated his limbs, removed all the flesh from the bone. They then opened his chest, took out his heart and sewed the hole back however they could, and then committed him to the sea. After that they grilled his organs on a flat stone and ate them. Now one must wonder what was going through their heads at the exact moment, since they refused to go to Marquesas Island because of cannibalism, and they now had no other option but to do just that. Meanwhile, the situation on the other 2 boats wasn't all sunshine and rainbows either. On Hendricks's boat, Thomas Lawson died and was mainly kept as a food source. Unlike on Chase's ship, there was no sailor's funeral for Thomas. After Thomas, Charles Shorter, Isaiah Shepard and Samuel Reed died in that order. On January 28th, the Hendrix's boat was further separated from Pollard's, and the 3 men on the boat were never seen alive again. Sometime later, a whaleboat with 3 skeletons was found on an island nearby, but it was never confirmed whether they were the 3 crewmen from the Essex. The worst was on Pollard's ship. The starvation had reached such a level that men could no longer wait for someone to die naturally. The men had to resort to an old and grisly custom of the sea, drawing lots to see who would become the next meal. As misfortune would have it, Owen Coffin, Captain's younger cousin at just 18, drew a paper with a black spot, meaning that he was the one. According to Pollard, he was intended to take his place, but Coffin would have none of it. "I like my lot as well as any other," he said. Chase was shot. 10 days after Coffin, Barzillai Ray was the next one to go. On February 18th, Chase's ship was found by a British ship, Indian, and 1 week later, Pollard's ship also, while not specified where, only somewhere off of coast of South America by a whaling ship, Dolphin. It was said that Pollard and Charles Ramsdale were found sucking on the bones of their now deceased crew members, refusing to part with them for some reason or other. So much pain and death over a 90 or so days for some whale blubber and bone. Oh yeah, the 3 guys that decided to stay on Henderson Island were found some 11 months after and were rescued and promptly taken to Australia. They managed to stay alive for the whole 11 months. So all in all, 8 men survived out of 20. Well, 21 if you count David. Not long after his rescue, Pollard told his story to a group of captains at a dinner table, which is just a great way to get the party going. I'm sure dinner must have been a blast. Sometime after that, both Pollard and Chase were back at sea, pushing through their psychological trauma and scars that evidently left their mark. It is said that both of them fasted every November 20th in honor of their now deceased crew members. Furthermore, Pollard's next expedition was also marked with disaster. Twin Brothers, the ship that was under his command, stuck under Coral Reef and got wrecked as a result of that. Owens, on the other hand, got his own whaling ship and continued to do so well into his old age. Every one of them was welcomed back and accepted without any major judgment, except for Pollard, since he had committed the most abominable crime there is: gastronomic incest. Coffin's mother could not forgive nor forget what had happened to her son. Pollard was supposed to protect and guide the young men. They were flesh and blood, and she never forgave him for that. Now, as I have said at the beginning, being sailor was not easy back in the day. You might think, oh, I'll go on a journey, I'll visit new places, new islands, new people, but not every journey ends with a happy ending. Some are even way beyond just a simple bad ending, this one being the prime example of that. This is by no means the first ever recorded case of a ship getting sunk by a whale. It has happened before, and it has happened even after the Essex. The most recent one happening in 1999. But even now there are reports of a rogue killer whales attacking ships for fun. All in all, I hope you have found this story as fascinating as I have when I first heard of it. If you haven't subscribed so far, now would be the perfect time to do so. Oh, and like the video as well. Stay tuned for more stories like this in the future. I'll see you soon and see ya.